Welcome back to another episode of The Basics, where Dawn and I dive into the basics of plant-based nutrition. Again, my name is Emily Polikin. I am a plant-based nutrition and fitness coach. I'm kind of taking a step back, but still a very passionate love and interest of mine, which is why Dawn and I wanted to start this podcast, because she has the same love and interest as well. Dawn, do you want to do a quick intro before we hop in today?
Sure. My name's Dawn Hutchins, and I'm the founder of a company called Veggie Cooking, where we teach people plant-based cooking for weight loss, vitality, long-term health. And I'm a plant-based chef, and I'm director of plant-based nutrition for a large corporation based out of Walnut Creek, California. So I run a corporate wellness program that you'll probably hear me talk a lot about because we run this program across 95 locations throughout the United States. And we have about 14,000 people between employees and dependents. So I've come across a lot of people adding more plant-based food. So it's been really fun to be able to share experiences and what works and little things I've learned along the way.
Yes, you have a wealth of knowledge as far as nutrition goes. So happy to have you here today. So, okay, I guess last episode we talked about reading nutrition labels. This week we are diving into something that there's a lot of confusion, a lot of buzz around, which are carbs and fruit. So sometimes you might hear, don't eat potatoes, don't eat grapes, don't eat bananas, all these things people are saying, don't eat that, do eat this. It gets very confusing. So we are going to take a mini deep dive into that topic today. So Dawn, let's start. First off, why is there so much like buzz and confusion around these types of topics to begin with?
I think there's a bunch of reasons why. I think there were some guidelines that came out in the past that talked about more carbohydrates and lower fat, but I think a lot of people leaned into refined carbohydrates. And then it just exploded with social media and misinformation being spread. So I think it's just continued to grow almost.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think social media, though there's a lot of pluses to social media, has caused so much confusion. And I mean, like a hook that might sound interesting, someone with no nutritional background may be like, don't eat oranges. And it's like, it'll grab attention or whatever it might be. And they'll use that. And it's like, there's no science behind it. It's just a hook to grab attention. So it's
Hmm.
like, just like we've talked about before, there's so much false information out there, and when it comes to our health, we need to know what the facts are, because that's very important. That's one of the most important things we can be doing is properly fueling our body. So, yeah.
Hmm. Yep.
Let's dig into fruit first, and then we'll look into carbs. So, first off, Don, why is fruit so important for a well balanced nutritional plan?
Fruit is so low in calorie density. If you look at a calorie density chart that we talked about in the beginning of this series, it goes vegetables and then fruit are lowest in calorie density. And there's a lot of misinformation because you hear fruit's been hybridized and it's no longer the fruit of the past and it has way more sugar. But really, when you're looking at actual outcomes, when people add more fruit, their health outcomes improve.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of times people are trying to sell some kind of ancestral thing or um I don't e whatever they're trying to sell, the bottom line is that when you add more fruit, your health outcomes improve. Even if you have insulin resistance, you can still eat fruit and improve insulin sensitivity. So we can talk about that more, but it's full of vitamins, nutrients, fiber. When you're starting to hear about fiber maxing and things like that and how little fiber we're getting as Americans. So fruit is a great source of fiber. And then you're getting all this volume with the water that's
Hmm.
in the fruit, the whole fruit.
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna say, I mean, you've heard the phrase, I'm sure, "nature's candy," and it's like
Hmm.
nature packaged fruits. It's not like, artificial. We get Sour Patch Kids or something from the store, and that's all artificial. Fruit comes from nature. You grow it from a seed. It is, perfect in nature's form. So you, like you said, you're getting those micronutrients, the fiber, the water, you're getting so much wonderful things from it.
Mhm.
I mean, I just that made me think, Dawn, is there such a thing as eating too much fruit?
There are people that exist only on fruit. Fruit
Mm,
has, vitamins, nutrients, all the macronutrients. It has some fat in it. It has some protein in it. I think it's good to have a balance
yeah, I
is
agree.
what I've seen the best outcomes with having balance. If people are wearing continuous glucose monitors, you may see a spike in your glucose, but that's a totally normal bodily process. And if you are insulin sensitive, then it will normalize. And we can talk more about strategies for people that are, living with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance and some strategies if they're really worried about those glucose spikes, what they can do. But
Yeah.
yeah, fruit is a really healthy part of a whole food diet.
Yeah, 100%, and luckily it tastes great too.
Yes, yes, it
Um,
is nature's candy.
I do wanna dive in more to blood sugar, and you just mentioned insulin resistance and blood sugar. Can you give us more information from your, nutritional background and from your studies that you've done with the corporate groups and stuff? What's your understanding of how, fruit, affects our blood sugar?
So like I said, you can experience a glucose spike from adding fruit. One of the
Mhm.
strategies that we have as people, if people are really concerned about it, is a lot of times somebody will tell them to pair it with fat.
Okay.
But if they're trying to lose weight, and what we find works even better is actually eating some greens beforehand, and that will normalize those blood sugar spikes as they give their body a chance to adapt and become more insulin sensitive. What we have found that fuels insulin resistance more is actually fat and saturated fat. So
Yeah,
as we see everybody in our program, and typically, a lot of people have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. As they start to add more fruit, they actually see other outcomes improving. And so I think a lot of times what people will say is, oh, you can't have fruit because it spikes your blood sugar. But then a lot of times they're forgetting, well, I also have eaten bread or pastries or cupcakes or and those are kind of like, well, I'm splurging on these things, but
yeah,
then at the same time, I'm afraid of fruit. So as we've found, we're adding fruit and we're crowding out the refined carbohydrates that a lot of times also have a lot of saturated fat or are high in fat. We've just found people's health outcomes improving.
yeah, yeah. That makes complete sense.
Hmm.
And as far as fruit versus fruit juice versus
Hmm.
frozen fruit versus dried fruit, I mean, fruit can come in so many different forms. I'll dig in really quick to like the fruit versus juice. Going back to what you said before with, everything that is packaged with fruit, you're missing that fiber. So when you're juicing, you're taking out the fiber. So the blood sugar, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that's going to be spiking even more because you're
Hmm.
not having
Yep.
that fiber to help with the absorption. So I know between the two, it's like I never drink fruit juice. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious your thoughts on this because I know a lot of people do juicing cleanses, do a lot of juicing, and
Hmm.
they don't have issues or they have good results as far as weight loss goes. I personally don't know the data there. I just know in general, when you're losing the fiber and you're having juice, you're gonna have, more of a blood sugar spike and
Hmm.
you're missing the fiber. So I guess what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? And then we can go into dried
A
fruit.
lot of people will are not used to eating any fruit or they're terrified to eat fruit and they'll lean into smoothies a lot of times, which I would say are a little bit better than removing all the fiber and doing juicing.
Yeah.
I have found if people are doing these juice cleanses and stuff, many times they're also mixed with vegetable juices. So that will definitely decrease that blood
Mhm.
sugar spike for sure.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
even as people are you always wanna have an as compared to what situation. So, what you really wanna do ideally is eat the whole fruit or eat, Frozen fruit is fine too. Like, I will buy 5-pound bags of frozen blueberries,
Yeah.
and that is the whole form, and usually it's less expensive, it's just as healthy, and it's usually, you know, much easier to store because it doesn't go bad that fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, those are the 2 really great options. As people start to lean into smoothies, we tell them you might wanna add more vegetables because usually you can fit 3 apples into a smoothie and drink it down super fast before it even registers that you just ate even if it includes the fiber.
Yeah.
So we recommend that if you really don't wanna eat the 3 apples, then slowly have your smoothie, try to add in some vegetables, and sometimes there's even the chewing motion creates
Yeah.
enzymes and helps with that breakdown process. So, if you can slow down and kind of chew your smoothie and really take your time so your body can recognize I'm consuming 3 apples in a sitting,
Yeah.
then, because that's one of the benefits of eating the whole fruit is you're getting fuller faster, and so you're just automatically eating fewer calories because
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
low in calorie density. So, could you sit down and eat 3 apples? Yes, but usually you're not likely to. So, I would say, if you wanna do a smoothie, I would do a smoothie over juice, like total fruit juice, and then if you wanna do juice, have that in moderation, or if you can add, some vegetable juice in there as well. And I would maybe choose a juice over, like, a soda.
Yeah.
Um, but,
Definitely.
we're always going into this looking at it as compared to what. So,
Yeah.
um, especially if you have kids too and they only wanna drink juice, cutting that with water,
Mhm.
or really pushing towards the whole fruits is really kind of the best way to
Yeah.
go.
I love that, framework, I guess, is to
Mhm.
compared to what? Because, like you said, compared to soda, of course, choose the juice. Compared to the whole fruit, you're gonna get more out of it, more fiber, and you can eat less of it, so the calorie there's that calorie difference too, so,
Yes, and that's
that's really
really a
good.
way that when I'm looking at social media and they're like, "This is gonna kill you, this fruit is gonna kill you," there's never absolutes in nutrition. It's always as compared to what? Which one is this a better choice or is this a better choice? Is this or this? So that's something to just be aware of as you're watching social media and they're like, this apple's gonna kill you. Buy my blah 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 insulin reducer or something. They're
Yeah,
always trying to sell something. So nutrition is just so simple and not, I guess, that exciting, and it's hard to monetize it because it's just so simple.
true.
But that's just something to be aware of is that we're usually telling everybody okay, what were you eating before, and is this a step in the right direction?
Yeah, yeah, that's great, I like that, and on the note of, fresh fruit, frozen, what about dried fruit? What's your thought on
Mm.
dried fruit as far as the nutrition you're getting from it?
Dried fruit is, of course, fantastic in salads, to add that sweetness. I'll use dates a lot in baking
Yeah.
as a replacement for um, other sweeteners because you're adding some fiber in instead
Mhm.
of maybe using refined sugar. But if you could sit down and eat a whole bag of dried apricots or a ton of um, cranberries or raisins because all that water is missing.
Yeah.
So if we're doing an as compared to what situation, the step in the right direction would be the whole fruit because you're just not going to eat as much. Once it's dried, you can eat a lot more calories.
Mhm.
So dried fruit isn't bad for you. It's fantastic, like I said, in certain instances. But just think about that if you're trying to lose weight and you're thinking about calorie density. Dried fruit is more calorie dense because you're losing all the water and it's dried.
Yeah, makes sense, and then from the juice, it's like the end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
Juice, you're losing the fiber,
the
but you have lots
fiber. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's such a good point.
Yeah. I was gonna say with dates, I'm the same way. I love dates and even just like a very simple, I need to, oh, I just want something sweet and just put a little bit of natural peanut butter on them. And my goodness. And there's a ton of recipes out there with different dates, peanut butter
Yeah.
variations, but
Yeah.
granted, be
So good.
careful of the fat,
Yeah.
but, it's so good.
So
And
good.
another note on dried fruit that I wanna add is when you're getting dried fruit from the store, be careful, read those labels, kinda going back to the last episode, because I know a lot of times they add sugar. I was trying to get I think it was, like, dried blueberries or cranberries, one of them the other day, and I could not find any at, like, normal stores that didn't have added sugar. I think even Trader Joe's, which I do love Trader Joe's, and I was just like, I just want them normal. So it's like you're getting the sweetness from the fruit, and then it was, like, added on top of that. So that's my 2 cents. I think dates are I've never had a problem with that with dates, but other, dried fruits, a lot of times will add sugar, so
Yeah, and
I
especially with cranberries because 'cause they're a little tart naturally. So I
yeah,
do find a lot of times they're adding sugar to dried cranberries. So that's a good point to just be aware of that when
yeah.
you're looking at dried fruit.
Yes, definitely, because we don't wanna add to that sugar. Okay. Shifting to carbs. I feel like when I talk to people, nutrition, working one-on-one coaching, there's so much misinformation, my goodness, I can't talk today, about carbs. So first, let's get into, what carbs are good for us and what carbs might be hijacking us.
Mhm. And this circles back to, I think that the marketing for carbohydrates and low fat craze really caused this huge rise in refined carbohydrates. So, a lot of people remember Snackwell cookies. I remember buying those things by the box, and I would just eat those or the packages, and I would eat those like crazy. And I'm like, they're so low in fat, not realizing I'm just sabotaging my health. And, it's really hard when you're eating that many refined carbohydrates to not gain weight. But
Yeah.
when we're talking about a carbohydrate, a whole sweet potato that you've pulled out of the ground, full of fiber and
Mhm.
vitamins and nutrients, and water is so different than a piece of refined white bread that has no whole grains in it.
Yeah.
So, you think about what's in a whole grain, the bran, the germ, the endosperm, the
Mhm.
only thing is the endosperm, I think, is what white bread is.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
just that starchy outer shell that can last on a shelf through nuclear ice age. You know, I think that's the difference is people are so afraid of carbohydrates. Nobody is eating whole grains.
Yeah.
So when people are like, "Oh my gosh, I can't do carbohydrates." When was the last time you ate millet, farro, spelt?
Yeah.
Nobody eats these
Like, what
things.
what are what words are you even saying? No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know. So once we get through in our wellness program, once we focus on fruit, then we focus on vegetables, and then we get to whole grains, that is a challenge for people because not only are they not used, they have no idea how to cook them, and they're kind of scary, but a lot of people realize, oh my gosh, these are actually really delicious to add into
Yeah.
all different kinds of things, but they are an amazing source of fiber. They do have some protein, and they are a whole form of carbohydrate that your body takes a long time to break down. And when
Mm,
you cook a whole grain, it's full of fiber and water. So you can only eat so much of it. And
yeah,
that's why it's so low on the calorie density chart, right next to fruits and vegetables.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. And just comparing, and you were going into it, but like simple versus complex. The simple being it's stripped from the nutrients, so it's not in its natural form. White bread, white pasta, white rice, as opposed to whole grain, which we did talk about during the nutrition label episode, but whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, brown rice. So that comparison there, if it has been put through a processing, you know what I mean, where the
Yeah.
nutrients are stripped, it's gonna be, on the simple side, and you're gonna wanna eat that. If not, if you can avoid it altogether, that's great, or keep it very minimal.
Yeah. And A lot of people have a hard time switching their family from white rice to, say, brown rice. So
Mhm.
what we have done in my own house is do half and half.
Yeah.
So, I might add some of the white rice, but cook it if I'm cooking it in the Instant Pot, I cook it to the time of the brown rice. So it does get a little bit stickier, but, it's kind of a good halfway point
Okay.
to doing just switching everybody right to brown rice, because sometimes families will be like, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah, yeah.
And then some keys, because people will be wondering about bread, and we might have talked about this in a previous episode, but you wanna look for whole wheat or sprouted on the label.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And as far as with, like, the white and brown rice, I know from my experience, it's like I prefer the taste of white rice. I think it tastes better. I've adjusted, and I mean, I'll have brown rice the majority of the time, but there's still sometimes I'll have white rice. It's not the
Mhm.
end of the world to have these things.
Yeah.
But thinking of like white rice, simple carb, and then
Mhm.
thinking of like refined flour, simple carb, putting that in a cupcake. You know what I mean? It's like if having
Right.
white rice compared to a cup, again, kind of what your whole standard is compared to what.
Yeah.
So it's like just being mindful, and nothing has to be absolute, but the more you can go in the direction of, these whole unprocessed foods, the better for, weight loss and health and long-term longevity. So,
Mhm. So true, and I think potatoes have been so demonized, which is really sad because they do have a lot of vitamins and nutrients. People that are, again, managing their blood sugar in the beginning, if they want to increase their insulin sensitivity, you may, if you want to play around with adding some potatoes, just keep in mind reducing that fat, just really focusing on
yeah.
reducing the saturated fat, reducing all of the fat in your diet. And you can cool the potatoes first, cook them and cool them, and then you can eat them after they've been cooled, and it increases the resistant starch in there. So um, your blood sugar spike would be lower. And I think that, again, that is really different than when you're eating French fries that are full of fat. And
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of times people will take a potato and add cheese and butter and bacon and sour cream, and then they're demonizing the potato when it's really all of these super high fat things. And this is not a normal, a lot of doctors are not even going to understand this, that if you cut out
Right.
carbohydrates, you might not have glucose spikes, but is your goal to have long-term health, or is your goal to decrease glucose spikes?
Yeah.
Because your body should be able to have a glucose spike and then be able to manage it quickly,
Yeah.
um, because you are insulin sensitive. But you got
Mhm.
to think about what's your long-term outcome. And I think with people wearing all these continuous glucose monitors, they're only focused on reducing glucose spikes, not am I fighting chronic illness down the road?
Yeah, yeah, and that those spikes are normal. It's not like it's an indicator that, that's something immediately that needs addressed and that's horrible. Like you're saying, it's can you recover afterwards?
Mhm.
And same
Yep.
and I feel like I've heard or I'll hear people say like, "Oh, I'll order sweet potato fries. That's better." It's like it's the same potatoes and sweet potatoes both have so many nutrients in them, but same as in the french fries when you fry it and,
Yeah.
is it like that, you're
Yep.
losing the nutrients of both of them. I feel like the taste better and, you're having sweet potato fries or french fries every so often, get whatever you prefer, but I
Yeah.
guess the mindset of it's not like, "Oh, I'm being healthy, I'm getting sweet potato fries."
Right.
Still has all unless you're making it at
Right.
home without the oil and frying it, then that's
Yeah.
different, you know?
Yeah, and there's so many ways to prepare them, in the air fryer or in the oven with just maybe on parchment paper or just a hint of oil, instead of deep frying them, as compared to what? That's just another step in the right direction. Steaming, you can steam or boil potatoes, cool them off, and then if you want to do mashed potatoes or something,
Yeah.
you could do that with just a little bit of the potato water and some salt and maybe a little bit of soy milk or something, and it's delicious.
Yeah, yeah, and oh my gosh, there's this gravy recipe that is whole food plant-based. It's a nice recipe that I've been using lately, and it's like that helps because sometimes I'll make the potatoes and it's like they're just a little dry, but the gravy I never used to be a gravy person, but I'm like, "Oh, that's good." It adds
Yeah.
a lot to them. But
Oh,
as
yeah.
far as, like, at home, you were saying the fries, my favorite way is to wash the potato really good, peel it, cut it up, or if I use yellow potatoes, I won't peel it. Put it in the air fryer with whatever seasonings I'm feeling that day, and then I have fries. It's like
Yeah.
it's different, of course, it's not giving you that, quite as satisfying feeling as French fries from a restaurant, but so many times more healthy.
Yeah. Well, and when you get them crispy in there, I would take those 10 times over just because thinking about what I feel like after I
Yeah.
eat, and I know I'm gonna feel so much better, and they're crispy and delicious,
Mhm.
then that makes me happy.
Yep, that's a good point. Listening to your body, because I know the same thing. I'll have it out and it's like, yeah, I feel different than when I have my healthy ones at home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's a good lead in though, because I was going to ask you about like a decision framework here before we end, like what people can kind of look to as far as how to help them make decisions. We're going to get into fat in the next episode, which is an
Mm.
important one to talk about. But I guess we're learning all these different things about nutrition. What's like a framework people can use when they're out as far as, maybe looking for the whole foods versus the processed or whatever else you could think? Does it keep you full or satisfied? Is it balanced? Looking at, going back to the plate method, can you distill a few little nuggets of what people can take home with them as far as like a framework for deciding the healthier options of food to eat?
Yeah, you can find a baked potato on, I swear, almost any menu, and just you can get that, plain or add a little bit of dressing and a little bit of salt and pepper, and if they have, any kind of, like, black beans, you could add that. Broccoli's great with it. So there are tons of things that you can do to add salsa. Some people like salsa on it. Some
Oh,
people
yeah.
just like some ketchup, which does have sugar, but if you eat it in moderation, just a little bit, that'll be fine. I think that it's hard to find real whole grains out at restaurants anywhere. Maybe usually if they're serving rice, it's gonna be white rice. So that's just something to think about. You may wanna just splurge on the white rice. A better choice from there would be ordering the baked potato and then figuring out what you wanna put on it. Um, and then you can always get a fruit cup when you're out. So many places have, like, a fruit cup,
Yeah.
you could do that.
Because fruit is
Um
good, as we
Fruit is
learned.
good. Yep, yep, and, always thinking about adding vegetables, though, when, having that vegetable on your plate, and then you wanna have, of course, so half of your plate would be fruits and vegetables, a quarter would be your whole grains or starchy vegetable, and then a quarter is gonna be your, plant protein. So
Mhm.
just thinking about how you're building your plate based on that plate method that we talked about in a
Yeah.
previous episode would be my recommendation as best you can. Because sometimes you just have to do the best you can.
Yeah,
What do
definitely,
you
and that's
think?
why the whole plate method, that we talked about before is such a wonderful tool to think of about meals. It is hard, I think, being out depending on where you are. Some areas like California, I think they accommodate a lot better to plant-based eating, but even so, sometimes I'll go to a vegan restaurant and it's unhealthy vegan food, so
Right. Yeah.
um, I feel like all in all, learning to enjoy cooking is a good way to go and just
Yes.
hopefully having homemade meals. Of course, that's easier said than done, and I know that's not always realistic given people's lifestyles. But yeah, just doing the best you can and just trying to keep in mind, the nourishing your body part, not your body part, but your
Yeah.
body. Funny.
Yeah.
Um, as, like, the key here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't need to redo that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, on
Yeah.
that note, is anything from the fruit or carb perspective that we didn't talk about that you think is worth noting before we end today?
Oh, wow. I think, just knowing that whole forms of carbohydrate are really great,
Mm.
especially if you are, the carbohydrates are fueling your brain needs glucose, it fuels workouts. I am really glad that I'm seeing a lot of people in the fitness community realizing that they're getting some amazing gains when they add carbohydrates back.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'm really glad that I'm seeing more of that information in the fitness community. I think in the general population, there's still fear around it, but I just know from looking at all the participants in our wellness program that as the first thing we focus on is adding fruit and then once we get to the whole grains, people are having amazing health outcomes. So
yeah, yeah,
it's just I've seen it now over and over and over. It's just once you see it, you can't unsee it. So just knowing that if you increase the amount of fiber and decrease the amount of fat, and that doesn't mean no fat. We'll talk about fat in the next episode, but just knowing that your health outcomes will improve as you do that.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'd say just kind of thinking of something else to leave you guys with is focusing on adding, like you mentioned before, since today we talked about fruit and carbs. The complex kind, being the healthy ones. Just focus on adding those 2 things into your meals this week or this month until next episode, we'll talk about a new topic, but rather than which Dawn, I love this has been like a foundation since I started talking to you forever ago, is like focus on adding,
Yep.
not subtracting, having, that positive mindset, and then, you'll eventually start to, take those things out of your diet and you'll have so much good stuff in it. So
Yes,
focusing on adding fruits and complex carbs into your meals.
absolutely. I love that. That's a perfect takeaway.
It came from you. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Like we said, next week we're going to be talking, or next episode, we're going to be talking about fat, which again has a lot of myths and misconceptions. So make sure to stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.